First, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Alex Gomez, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations for the Mass Youth Leadership Foundation. And I'd like to formally welcome everyone to the college application webinar. We're going to get started now. Before we get started, I just want to point out that to the right of your screen, there should be a chat box area. So if anyone has any questions throughout the presentation at all, feel free to throw them in there, and they'll be answered as soon as Chelsea or I can get a chance to answer it. As Chelsea mentioned, if you go up to the top right corner and just mute yourselves for the purpose of making sure there's no echoes or background noise so that we can get this smoothly going. If you want to introduce yourselves in the chat box at any point too, feel free to do so. And a little more about myself. I'm a 2010 alumni of the MYL Foundation Master Program Conference. So it's been a few years now, but still going at it. I've also been on the conference planning committee as the director of programming for a few years now, and I'm finishing up my senior year at Roger Williams University. So the college process is still pretty fresh, as well as college life itself. I can answer any questions pertaining to that. But enough about me. It's time to introduce Chelsea. So Chelsea Walker is a 2008 alumna of the Mass Youth Leadership Foundation. She served as the sophomore representative from Blue Hills Regional Vocational Technical High School in Canton. Since her attendance at the conference, Chelsea has taken the Master message and applied it to her everyday life through various service project initiatives, leadership positions, and employment. She served as a member of the operations team during several three-day conferences and served on the conference planning committee in 2014 and 15 as the director of staff. She's originally from Randolph, Massachusetts, and now she resides in Dover, New Hampshire. Chelsea is a first-generation college graduate, having studied psychology and deaf and hard of hearing studies at the University of New Hampshire. She's currently pursuing a master's degree in educational studies. She currently works as an admissions counselor at the University of New Hampshire and is striving to help students achieve equal opportunities and success in education. Her role in the admissions office is managing the undergraduate recruitment and applications for students on the Cape and the Islands, Norfolk County, Bristol County, Quincy County, Plymouth County, and southern Worcester counties in Massachusetts. Diversity programming coordination, developing office communications within print, email, and social media publications, and works closely with guidance counselors across the country. One of Chelsea's goals through her work is to demystify the college application process, promote equal access in higher education, and empower youth through citizenship in their communities. So, with that wonderful introduction, I'm going to let Chelsea take over. The floor's all yours, Chelsea.
Wonderful. And Alex, I apologize for that mouthful, and I'm sorry for all of you who are trying to follow all that. Basically, what it boils down to is I am very involved in the Massachusetts Youth Leadership Foundation. It's one of my biggest passions, and externally to that, I also work at the University of New Hampshire in their Office of Undergraduate Admissions. So I am an admissions counselor, and I live the application process every day of my life. So my goal here this evening is to really just demystify it for you, because I recognize it can be one of the most stressful things, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, and whether you're a guidance counselor. So with that being said, I do want to just tell you all that ultimately, big disclaimer, is that this does not prevent you or substitute any contact that you should be having with your guidance departments and even admissions departments in general across the country. Every application process varies from college to college. Every high school is a little bit different, so do make sure that you just check in with your guidance counselors and call up those admissions counselors. That's why we're there, is to help you through this process. So with that being said, hopefully I can get this started. So my biggest message for all of you first is that college is for everyone, and that this application process is truly in your hands. Starting from 9th grade all the way to 12th grade, and even once you're in college, the entire process is fully within your control. A lot of people look at admissions counselors as gods and goddesses, and that, you know, we are rulers over the decisions, but ultimately the work that you do over your 4 years is preparing you for college and the application process. So with that being said, a few things that I really want to touch upon is some starting steps. So first, college is for everyone. Second, you definitely do not need to know what you want to do forever. A lot of students sit here and think at 17, 18 years old, I need to pick a major and I need to stick with it and I'm going to do it for 4 years. And while that is the case for many students, at UNH, for instance, only about 30% of students actually finish in the degree program they start in. 70% either come in undeclared or change their major at least once. So every college across the country, I would say at least 90, if not 100% of them, do offer undeclared, non-declared major options. So don't hesitate to go in, and always make sure you ask admissions offices what the steps are if you're an undeclared student and how easy it is to change your major. The second thing that I want to really touch upon is college fairs. College fairs are things that admission counselors from all over the country and even internationally sometimes attend. I go to hundreds every year and stand behind a table representing UNH and just answer any questions that students and parents and guidance counselors, even just legal guardians might come up and ask. So definitely go to those. NEACAC, NEACAC. They hold dozens all over New England every year, and those are the big ones in New England. So definitely look out for those if you're a junior on this webinar. The next thing is that I really want you to utilize your resources. This webinar tonight is a resource, and I'm so glad you all are utilizing it. The link next to Timeline Resources brings you to College Board. College Board is basically a huge umbrella organization that manages a lot of student contact information. They're the ones who manage the SAT as well as ACT. So if you need a go-to website that has a lot of different information and can answer a lot of your questions, College Board is definitely one of those resources. Okay, there we go. Okay, so for those of you who are juniors, I just wanted to outline some important things that you should be thinking about. The first is that I really want you to start to develop an interest list of the different colleges and universities that you might want to visit, might want to pursue and eventually apply to. Questions that you should be asking yourself is, do I want to pursue a 2-year degree, which is usually an associate's? Do I want to pursue a 4-year degree, which is a bachelor's? Do I want a public school? Do I want a private school? Do I want something that's really small where I see the same faces every day? Do I want something medium, or do I want something really big? Where do I want it? Do I want it somewhere in New England, somewhere across the country? Do I want it in a city, a small town, in the middle of the woods? There's so many different options for you, and if you can answer those big questions, it'll help you narrow down. There are hundreds of colleges in the country, and it can be overwhelming to try to figure out which ones you want to apply to. So those questions can be very helpful. The next thing, cost. Cost is a huge factor for families as well as students. However, I never want any of you to factor out any specific colleges or universities based off of their overall price tag. Reason being, you never know what kind of financial aid package you're going to get. And we will talk about financial aid later on in this webinar. Next thing, major offerings. Like I said, some students know what they want to do, some students really have no idea. So make sure that you look at the different majors that are available at that university. If you really have no idea, maybe you want to pick a university that has more major options for you to choose from. The next, student opportunities and research. What kinds of, clubs and organizations do you want to be available to you as a student? What kind of academic support services are there? Is there tutoring? Is there services for students with disabilities? Should you be a member of that group? There's just so many different things that you want to look into. At UNH specifically, for instance, I always tell students we have a writing center, we have a math center, we have a center for academic resources, and I could go on. So those are just some things that you should always be asking about, especially on a tour or even via email to the different colleges. Next, admission criteria. Every student is different. Your academic needs are going to be different, and what you will excel in academically will determine, what college will fit you best. So maybe you want a smaller classroom environment. Maybe a smaller school will be good for you. Maybe you're a student with a stellar 4.0 GPA. Maybe you're a student who has a 3.0. Make sure you look into the different admission criteria for every university and find ones that fit you the best. Retention and graduation rates are also really important. Retention usually refers to the percentage of students that stick around from freshman year to sophomore year. Not only does it speak to a university's ability for their students to succeed academically to be able to stay for their sophomore year, but it also speaks to their likelihood of enjoying the university. So they're saying, I really want to stay because I like it here, I can afford it here, and I have the academic success to stay here. The next, student breakdown. If you're looking into going to a college somewhere in another part of the country, for instance, always make sure you ask the percentage of in-state and out-of-state students. You don't want to come as a student from Massachusetts to a school that has 90%, in-state students, and everyone kind of asks you, what town are you from? And you're like, oh, well, I'm from Mass, and everyone else is from Texas. So just make sure you ask what the in-state and out-of-state demographics are, and then also perhaps what the diversity is on that campus. If you are a student of color, maybe you want to know if there's other students of color on campus or if it's a predominantly white institution. Next, definitely begin to visit colleges. This goes for seniors as well. Sometimes you just really want to get that ball going. Now we're getting into, hopefully, knock on wood, it doesn't snow anytime soon, but we're getting into that snowy season. So spring is also a really great time. Schedule your visits ahead of time and contact them if you're traveling a long distance so that you can set up meetings with professors and different faculty and staff on campus to get a better picture than what campus tours can sometimes offer. In most places, colleges will have counselors that are in charge of specific territories. So I'm in charge of a specific portion of Massachusetts along with 3 other of my colleagues. There's someone who's in charge of California, so on and so forth. So most of us in the admissions world are in charge, and we'll have a counselor that you can work one-on-one with to answer any of your questions. Next, express your interest in the schools that you're interested in possibly applying to. Some schools track interest, meaning they count how many times you've emailed them. They count if you have gone to their campus. It's more common in private schools than public, for instance, but if you're really interested in a school, make sure that you begin to express that interest now. If you require accommodations, definitely reach out to those schools. Legally, they have to provide interpreters, for instance. They have to provide wheelchairs if you need one, and there's other various accommodations that you can get. So just reach out to them ahead of time, and they'll be more than happy to do that. Next, build relationships with your teachers for future recommendations. When you're filling out the application, that can be a huge stress point for students, is figuring out who's going to write their letter of recommendation. So start building those relationships now so you know what teachers you can go to later. Next, choose a strong program of study and work hard. Junior year, I know stereotypically, is the most important year of your high school, and I do speak from the truth when I say that that is important. Junior year is an important year. Not any more important than senior year, however. So make sure if you're a junior on this webinar, if you're a senior, you just work really hard, pick a strong program of study. Program of study includes your English, your math, your science, your social science, and your foreign language. So most colleges look for all 5 of those when they're reviewing your transcript. The next thing is the benefits of AP, IB, and honors level courses. Some colleges require you to take honors, some require you to take AP. IB is International Baccalaureate. Every high school is a little different in their course offerings. Most colleges look at every student in the context of their high school, so if your high school doesn't offer AP or IB, I wouldn't necessarily stress about it. However, always challenge yourself appropriately. I personally would rather see you get an A or a B in a college prep level class than overextend yourself and get a C in an AP class. The benefits of taking AP, IB classes include usually additional weight to your GPA, which can make you more admissible. AP can also give you college credit, likewise with IB. Make sure that you send your AP scores to every college so that they can give you that credit. But if you're in an AP class now and you're really frustrated, like, why am I doing this? Trust me, it pays off later. Lastly, take the SATs or the ACTs now. PSATs are usually offered in October of your sophomore and junior years. So if you have any friends, encourage them to take the PSATs. And in most cases, you can take the SATs more than once. And some colleges do super score. So they'll take the highest score in all 3 categories and combine it to give you the best score possible. So it usually doesn't hurt to take them 2-3 times. And then start the scholarship search now. I'll provide some resources at the end of this webinar for some scholarships, and definitely just apply to as many as possible. It's a really great way to help bridge the gap between how much it costs to attend college and how much money you have to help pay that bill. The last slide for your junior year is doubled up. I'm not sure why. I'm sorry about that. The summers between your junior and senior year, I always say that you should visit college campuses if you can. If you can't get to them, virtual tours can be fantastic. The Common Application, which is a very big umbrella application that many colleges and universities use, they have an essay, and that prompt goes live sometime during the summer every year. So the summer is a great time to get ahead on your application. Also, if you don't know what you want to study, shadowing jobs can be a great thing for you to do, as well as maybe pursue internships, get a job so that you can save up money for college, have something to put on your resume. All of that is really a productive way to spend your summer. And then lastly, prepare for the SAT or the ACT if you're planning on taking it in the summer or your senior year, and then study for subject tests if you're planning on taking those. In your senior year, which I know is when the stress really hits, so I always say to students to plan on applying to a minimum of 4 schools. The first should be a safety school or a school that you're confident that you can get into. Then you should apply to 2 good fit schools, schools that you're pretty sure that you can get into, but it's not absolutely guaranteed. Then lastly, 1 reach school. So a reach school is a school that you have a chance to get into, but it's a reach for you ultimately. Lastly, and what a lot of people ignore, is that you should always plan to apply to a financial safety school, a school that you know that you can afford should you not necessarily get any financial aid, a school that is not an economic stretch for you as much as the other ones are. My biggest recommendation is that when you start applying and picking out the schools you want to send your applications into, create a spreadsheet with the deadlines and the application requirements, because every college is different, and I cannot begin to tell you the number of times that I get a call the day after the application deadline or a week after saying, I didn't realize it was the application deadline. Unfortunately, many admissions offices' hands are very much tied in whether or not we can grant extensions, so always just do your best to keep those things organized. The big picture of senior year, so in September of your senior year, you should really just prepare. Set up a meeting with your guidance counselor. That is probably the most important thing that you will do in your senior year. Attend open houses. A lot of colleges and universities across the country will hold a big open house where classrooms and faculty members will be available, where tours will be given and special events will be occurring on campus. So open houses are great events. Next, decide who's going to write your letter of recommendation and ask them early. A lot of teachers in your high schools will max out or set a cap on how many letters of recommendations they'll write, so the earlier you'll ask them, the more likely they are to say yes. Next, in September and October, you should be registering for the SAT or the ACT. You should be finishing up your essay, or at least working on it, and then begin to prepare a resume. At some colleges and universities, they might require you to attach a resume. The Common Application now gives you an option to attach a resume, and should you be asked to come in for any interviews, resumes are fantastic to have. In November and December, that's when it's really time to start to apply. You should be working on your applications. Some schools have early action, early decision deadlines that are in November. Some could even be in October, so you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping track of those. You want to identify which applications you'll be using. Like I said, the Common Application is very popular, but not every college accepts it. So make sure you look into which ones you're going to be filling out and how many different types of essays you have to write. In November and December, you do want to start to send in your AP and your SAT scores through the College Board. They sometimes experience delays in sending those scores, and some colleges won't be able to consider your application for their early deadlines if all of your pieces aren't in yet. So make sure you just request to send those in very early. Next, in January and February, you want to look at completing the financial aid or the FAFSA, and then also sending in CSS profiles, which I'll talk about later, to the financial aid offices at the specific colleges you're applying to. Next, in March and April, you want to review your acceptance letters because all of you are going to get into one college or another and you're going to go to college. And then accepted student visit days are usually fantastic. Once again, that's a specially created event at most colleges and universities across the country for students who have been accepted. It's also a really great opportunity to meet other students who are considering attending that university. Last but not least, May 1st is the national decision deadline. That is the day where every student has to pick which college they're going to go to and submit their enrollment deposit. The biggest tip I have for you for that is, make sure, first of all, that you submit your enrollment deposit by May 1st. But then if you're really stressed for financial restrictions about how you're going to submit that enrollment deposit, don't let that stop you. Always just contact the admissions office and see if perhaps they might be able to roll that into your fall semester bill or help you out in some way or another, grant you an extension. So if you are experiencing any of that, do just reach out to the admissions offices. Did someone have a question? I saw some things pop up.
Yeah, I was wondering what you had to say about the new and old SATs, how you guys were dealing with that.
Yeah, so every college and university, I think personally, is going to be treating the new and the old SATs very differently across campuses. However, we are recognizing that it is going to be a challenge for students. So at UNH, we are accepting both the new as well as the old. And while we haven't made an announcement about what specific scores are going to be required, I don't necessarily think a lot of colleges will be requiring the writing section because you do get that insight through the essay on the Common Application. But I really just encourage you to contact every admissions office and ask them individually what they plan to do with the new SAT.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So in recognizing that some colleges and universities do require interviews, I did want to give you a couple of tips on that. So the first is ask if an interview is available. Some don't offer interviews, some do, but you have to request them, and some request them of you. So when you are in an interview, my biggest recommendation is dress professionally. The next, shake the hands of the interviewer and bring your E word. For those of you who aren't familiar with what the E word is, that's enthusiastic, which is a big word here at the MYL Foundation. Don't all jump up at once. The next is know the school's mission and fast facts. It's not uncommon for a college to ask you if you know what their mission is and how you can bring that alive on their campus. You should also be prepared to speak towards why you would like to attend that university or college and what you would bring to the campus. Also, other classic interview questions, they're usually available on Google, and just practice with someone. The next thing, resumes. Just like when you're preparing for a job, you want to write a resume individually for each college if you're submitting one. These can be useful to bring to interviews, and you should. And you want to keep them short, usually to 1 page. I can't tell you how many times I get a resume that's 6 or 7 pages long. You should really try to condense it to be 1 page for high school degree. If you get a bachelor's degree and master's, that's when you can start adding on the pages. Lastly, always, always, always write a thank you letter. I know that that's kind of something that's fallen through the cracks over probably the last decade, but it is so nice as an admissions counselor to receive a thank you letter, especially after doing an interview. And you can write thank you letters also to your recommenders. I'm sure that would mean a lot to them. They put in a lot of time into those letters of recommendation. Okay. So in thinking about deadlines, and I'm sure your heads are spinning right now, so we'll take it one step at a time. I apologize. It's a lot of information. Deadlines. A lot of people spit out words in these admissions presentations, and they go flying over your head. Like, what are all these different things that they're talking about? Early action and early decision tends to be two of those terms. So early action is usually sometime between October and December, and basically that is a non-binding decision. So basically, if you're admitted, you usually have until May 1st to decide if you would like to attend. Early decision, however, is binding. You can only apply to one college early decision, and if you're admitted, you're basically saying, I'm going to go. They expect your deposit almost immediately, and it's a contract that you as a student as well as a parent have to sign that says, if I'm admitted, I'm going to attend. So be very careful with early decision. If you don't know for sure that you want to attend that college, don't apply early decision. The next is regular decision. If a college has a specific deadline, that is usually their regular decision. It's the last time that you can apply. There are benefits, of course, for every decision, but the last that I want to touch upon is rolling. Rolling is when a college will make its admission decision soon after the application is completed, and they release decisions on a rolling basis until they've met their class goals. So rolling usually means you can apply, super late, sometimes in March, April, May. It's not uncommon for rolling decisions to, be accepting until then. Regular decisions is that deadline, and then early is earlier in the year. The benefits of applying early action and early decision are usually for competitive majors. So at UNH specifically, like if you want nursing, for instance, our nursing program fills up really quick, so you want to make sure that you submit by the early action deadline. Some colleges also require you to apply by the early deadlines in order to be considered for scholarships. So when you're looking into every school and you're asking about their deadlines, make sure you ask them, do you have an early action or early decision deadline, and what are the benefits of applying early, or should I hold off? That's a big question, and I definitely want you all to ask that so that you're not losing out on opportunities and money in the long run. Oh boy. Oh, okay. So this is a resource that I wanted to show you all. So like I was saying, with NEACAC, N-E-A-C-A-C, that holds those big college fairs all over New England, there's also a big foundation called NACAC, which stands for the National Association of College Admission Counseling. NACAC net.et.org is the website, as you can see up here, and they also have some really fantastic resources. So this sheet here is really great at explaining exactly what I just went over, so preparing and research, applying, and deciding. Okay. So when it comes to the common application, like I said, it's that big umbrella application. Over 600 colleges and universities from all over the country accept this one application. The one thing that I do want to highlight is that there are fee waivers available for students who qualify. There are check boxes that you can check off that include, I qualify for free and reduced lunch. I am part of a federal TRIO program or student support services. There's all different types of categories that you can click. So if you can't afford to apply to a college, don't let that stop you, because you could probably receive a fee waiver. If you want to create a common application, you can click that link that says login, create an account. And it's really simple. I will go through screenshots of what I see as an admission counselor when reviewing the common application. However, some things I want you to know is that before you get started, you want to make sure that you have your counselor's information, your school counselor, the high schools you want to apply, the colleges you want to apply to, your high school's SEEB code, so that's a 5-digit number that's specifically tied to your high school. You want to know your class rank as well as your GPA, because that is a question on the Common Application. And then lastly, your family information. The rest of it should come pretty naturally to you when you're filling it out. So with that being said, this is a little view into how I see the Common Application and what I look for when I am looking at it. So the first page is the profile, who you are as a student. So what is your name? What is your contact information? I would use that email and that phone number if I have any questions for you. So always just make sure you put down the one that you're going to answer and look at. In terms of demographics, that is who you are culturally and ethnically. If you're involved in the military, you can put that there. You also want to put your citizenship status. So if you're a dual citizen, you can declare that there. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can declare that there. If you've lived in multiple countries, you would put that there, this many years in that country, this many years in the United States. And then lastly, at the bottom, you can see the Common Application fee waiver. And yes, military, there is an option for you to say that you're a dependent of someone in the military. Okay. The next thing that I see is your family. So here you would put the household. So for students who are part of a family who's been divorced, you would put the divorce date there. And for your parent information, parent 1 is the one who supports the student the most. So if you're married, it doesn't necessarily matter who you put as parent 1 or parent 2, but if there's a divorce in the family, you want to put parent 1 as the parent that the student lives with. In here, you can put your occupation, your address, your contact information, as well as your education. Don't stress too much if there isn't an exact match for your occupation. I get so many phone calls like, oh, well, this isn't on there. There is another option where you can write it out if you want to, but I wouldn't necessarily stress incredibly bad about the occupation aspect. Siblings, so that is where you would put who your siblings are. There you can put step siblings as well as half siblings, and you want to also include their educational background. So there are options for, you know, in elementary school, completed secondary school, some of college, have graduated college. Basically what that's doing is it tells me, are you an only child? Are you the first to go to college? Are you the last to go to college? It just kind of helps paint that picture for me. For your education, this is where you would put what high school you have attended. If you have attended more than one high school, you can put that there. And you want to also include your counselor information. So this is where your guidance counselor with their email and their telephone number would go. For your grades, you would put your GPA as well as your class rank that is provided by your high school. If a high school doesn't weigh their GPAs the same way that each college does, UNH specifically, we will recalculate your GPA to give you extra weight for honors, AP, and IB classes. So I do know that that was a question, and do know that we do recalculate GPAs to give extra weight. Next, you'll see right here is current year courses. So that is where you would disclose what courses you're planning on taking senior year. In admissions offices, we take that list pretty seriously and we rely on it, so make sure it's accurate. And if anything changes, if you drop a class or change your schedule after you've applied, make sure you contact the admission office and tell them that. For your honors, you can put different awards that you've earned in your high school career, whether it be in high school or out of high school. For instance, if you're an Abigail Adams Scholar, if you're part of the National Honor Society, if you received an award for athletics, if you received an award for music, anything like that, you can put that there for your honors. For future plans, that's sort of what you want to do moving forward in your life. If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be the President of the United States, if you want to be a musician, an artist, a philosopher, anything like that, you can put that down there for your future plans. Okay. When it comes to testing, I know that this is a very stressful topic. The things that I want you to know is that first, you want to make sure that you send your official SAT or ACT scores in through the College Board. And you always want to ask a school about their reliance on standardized testing. For some schools, it's not weighed as heavily as your GPA. At UNH, for instance, that is the case. And you always want to ask if they require you to send in your SAT or ACT scores. And if they don't require you to send them in, what are the benefits of sending them in? At some schools who have done away with requiring standardized testing, they'll say, we don't require standardized testing. However, if you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships, for instance, we need you to send in your SAT or your ACT scores. So always just make sure you ask that clarifying question. Lastly, and what can really be your best friend, is super scoring. Super scoring, like I said, is if you've taken the SATs more than once, the school will take the highest score in all 3 categories and combine it to give you the best score possible and ignore all of the other scores. So at UNH, we do super score the SATs. We don't super score the ACTs. Every college is a little different, so always ask about super scoring. The next page is your activities. So this is where your athletics and extracurricular activities, any work experience you've had, any other clubs or organizations that you're a part of can go on this sheet. Because you are part of the MYL Foundation, the Massachusetts Youth Leadership Foundation, that is something I definitely want all of you to put on the activities section of your common application. You are an alumni, so put it down there as something you were involved in as a sophomore, and then hopefully if you become further involved in the association as a junior and senior, you can put that there as well. I know that's something I put on my application, and it helped me a lot. Okay. The last page, or the second to last page, I should say, is writing. So this is where your essay goes, and I'm just going to skip over that because I'm going to give you some tips afterwards. Okay, Caitlin, so what should we do if our activities do not fit? At the end of the common application, there is an option to attach your resume. So you can attach a resume with all of the different activities on there. Other than that, I would pick the top 10 that speak to who you are as a student the most and the things that consume your time the most, and put those on there, and then put a holistic review on your resume and attach that to the common application. Okay. Ooh. Okay. The last page is what majors you want to apply to. So every college will ask you what's your first choice major, what's your second choice major. At UNH, we also ask if you have any relatives who have attended UNH. Basically, when it comes to selecting your majors, I always tell students, reach for the stars on your first choice major. Even if you think you might not be qualified for that super competitive major, always just put it down there and let the admissions office make that decision for you. Then for your second choice major, put something that you would be happy in. Always ask an admissions office what their policy is for considering students for majors. We always consider students for their first choice major first, their second choice major second if they're not qualified for their first, and then lastly, we always consider students for undeclared in the College of Liberal Arts so that they always know if they're admissible to UNH in some way and know that that's an option for them. Some colleges say if you're not admissible to your first or second choice majors, we're just going to deny you. So if that also brings up a good point that if you are denied to a college, you can always call them and say, why specifically was I denied, and is there anything that I can do to better my application, including changing my major, for instance. One of the things that didn't show up on here, or I might have accidentally skipped over, was disciplinary actions or breaks in your schooling. So that is another option right there where, once again, if you've changed high schools, you would have to say that I've changed high schools and provide a brief explanation as to why that occurred. And then, of course, if there's been any disciplinary actions in your high school career, you'd have to disclose that legally on the common application and provide an explanation. I always encourage students, and I know everyone out there is, fantastic, that, God forbid anything does happen, just make sure you provide a good explanation so that the committee is aware of what, played a part in that incident. In terms of your essay, the tips and tricks I have for you are to be unique, be professional, edit your essay, and tell me about yourself. So as you might have noticed from the common application, most of your application really are a lot of numbers. What's your GPA? What's your SAT score? What's your ACT score? What grades did you earn in your classes? So on and so forth. However, the essay is really your time to tell us about yourself. So don't be afraid to do so. Over the last 5 or so years, the Common Application has made it a bit easier for you, and now they provide those essay prompts that I told you about that go live in the summer. These 5 here at the bottom are the ones for this year, the 2015-2016 cycle, and I can tell you that they don't change a whole lot from year to year. For instance, number 1, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. That has been an application question for about 3 or 4 years. So you can basically use these as a template and always tweak your essay later on when the prompts are, finalized for next year. When we look at your application and your essay, these are some things that we look for in all applicants. A lot of students think, I have to write my essay about the worst thing that happened in my life, or I have to write it about the best thing that ever occurred to me, or I flew to this country and I spent a week there and it changed my life, and I read some really, really, really amazing stories. It's one of my favorite parts of the application. However, one of the misconceptions is that, if I'm plain Jane, if I haven't really done anything, I can't write a good application essay. It becomes overwhelming. However, I can tell you that as wonderful as the things that have really only happened to you, stories that occur out there, are the ones that are written about, you being an only sibling, or you being the youngest sibling, or the time that you failed while doing a sport, or the time that you really excelled in helping someone, a child, for instance, learn how to read. Those sometimes make the best essays. So don't overthink it and write something that's close to your heart, because you're telling us about yourself and really painting that whole picture for us. So like I said, this is a list of some things that we can look for. Your ability to achieve your ability to succeed academically, your intellectual promise, the quality of writing in your essay, your creative and original thought that you've expressed in your essay, the productive class discussions that your recommenders might have spoken about in your letters of recommendation, your respect for faculty, which can also be included in letters of recommendation, your maturity, your integrity, your self-confidence. Overall, there's so many different things that we look for, and these are just some of them. The importance of your transcript basically boils down to your program of study, your English, math, science, social science, and foreign language classes, the grades that you've earned in those classes, the program rigor, so honors, AP, IB classes, the trend, and your overall GPA. So like I said, many schools do recalculate your GPA to give you extra weight for honors and AP. And in terms of trend, that basically refers to the fact that a lot of students start off freshman year really having a hard time adjusting to high school, and their grades are negatively impacted by that. But come sophomore year, they're getting better. Junior year, they're really doing fantastic. And senior year, you're really hitting that ball out of the park. That is fantastic, having that upward trend. We also look for consistency. So if a school says, we look for a B plus average in your core classes, then that would mean B plus consistently throughout your 4 years. And then ultimately avoid the downward trend, which boils down to senioritis and doing poorly in your junior year. So that's why I always tell students to work hard so that that trend is positive. The last thing that I really want to touch upon is financing college. So some resources for you are on this slide. The first is knowing what net price calculators are. So net price calculators are available through the Department of Education as well as many different colleges and universities' websites, usually to be found on the financial aid page. And basically those calculators can help you determine what your approximate financial aid package would look like if you went to that college or university. So that can be a really good way to narrow down the list for you. MEFA, which stands for the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, is also a great resource for Massachusetts residents in financing college. In terms of the FSA ID, formerly known as your PIN, that is an electronic signature that's required on the FAFSA form. And basically that's something that you can set up now if you really want to, and that'll help move things along later on when you're filing your free application for federal student aid. So that is the third from the top, FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid, which I'll touch upon on the next slide. CSS profiles are things that a lot of private universities will require to complete your financial aid package, and basically it's additional information that they're looking to confirm your financial aid and your income status, and those do cost a little bit of money to send out, so always just ask different colleges and universities if they require you to send in that CSS profile. The biggest thing that I also want you all to look into are scholarships. So on the last slide that I'll get to soon, there are lots of scholarships out there available to you, ranging anywhere from, I'm a lefty to I'm involved in this organization, so here's a scholarship I can apply to. There's things out there for every student. You just have to find it. Ultimately, start applying now because, like I said, it's a great way to bridge that gap between costs of attendance and your financial aid package. Then don't forget about your college's financial aid office as well as your local college's financial aid office. For instance, if you are close to UMass Boston or if you're close to UMass Amherst, contact their financial aid office and say, I really would like you to provide me with some resources pertaining to financial aid, any websites. They can be a really amazing help to you, as well as your guidance office. So the FAFSA, like I said, is the free application for federal student aid. Every college and university in the country has a different deadline to submit the FAFSA, so make sure you check in with them and write those deadlines down. It's just as important as the application deadline. Basically, for seniors this year, you can start filing the FAFSA on January 1st. And I always tell students to submit your FAFSA to every college you're thinking about applying to or have applied to, because this is the only way you can be considered for financial aid. Next year, so people who are currently juniors, the FAFSA is going to be changing a little bit, and you'll be able to file it as early as October 1st, and you'll be able to use 2 years previous tax data. So just make sure, if you have the opportunity to file your taxes electronically, definitely do that because it makes it a lot easier to just sync the data to your FAFSA later on. This is a slide on the types of financial aid that are available to students, so the difference between loans and grants and scholarships. I definitely want you all to look at this a little bit more in depth later on. However, I really want to focus my attention on the tips. So my tips for you pertaining to financial aid is, like I said, check with every college about scholarships, scholarship eligibility, and any specific details pertaining to those scholarships. Are they renewable for all 4 years? Is your financial aid renewable for all 4 years, or do you stand a chance of losing a significant portion in years to follow? Make sure that you always compare the overall cost of attendance of every college. A lot of people look at the total tuition and say, okay, I got a $10,000 scholarship from here. Wahoo, that's fantastic. However, what it might boil down to is that despite that $10,000 scholarship, it still might be $5,000 more than another place that might not have given you as much money. So always compare that overall cost of attendance. That should include tuition, fees, room and board, housing, meal plan, all of that fun stuff. Make sure you calculate all of that in there, and the admissions offices can usually provide you with that information if it happens to be hard to find on the website, which isn't uncommon. And then lastly, always ask if there are payment plans available. Sometimes it makes it easier to handle that tuition bill come the summer when you have to come up with that lump sum. If they have a payment plan, it can usually break it out into, say, like 10 payments or something and make it so that you don't have to take out as many loans. This is the list I was telling you about scholarship resources. So your guidance department, scholarships.com, Big Futures, which is part of College Board, and then unigo.com are some of my favorites. Google also doesn't hurt, nor does your community, so always just keep your ears, always listen and keep your eyes open for scholarship opportunities that might be advertised to you through word of mouth or even social media. It's free money, so right away, do those essays. It's worth it, I promise. The last thing, and while it doesn't pertain to applications in college, is what I want to tell you is the OneDay Conference, which will be occurring on February 13th. It's kind of like the 3-day conference, however, it's it's compressed into one day. So do mark your calendars, and it is open to all MYL alumni and friends. Remember, you hold the power in this application process. And then lastly, if you have any questions, I will open it up, but do write down my email address as well as my telephone number. I'd be more than happy to help any of you through this process or clarify anything. Like I said, I really just want to demystify this as much as humanly possible and try to relieve some stress. So even if it's you knowing that I'm there as a resource to you, then please utilize me. All right? So I do know that it is about 9 o'clock, and I understand if some of you want to get going and eat dinner, get to sleep, do your homework. However, I will remain on the line with Alex for anyone who has questions. I saw some of them pop up, but it was really hard for me to catch all of them, so I will answer them as they come in. All right? Thank you all so much for joining, and like I said, don't hesitate to stay on and ask questions.
Chelsea, I think someone had a question about class rankings. I don't know if you had a chance to answer that one already.
No, I didn't see the specific question. Do you know it, or does whomever?
The question was, what if your school doesn't do class rankings?
Yep. So a lot of schools don't do class rankings, and that's okay. The time in which class rank usually plays an important role is for merit scholarships, for more competitive majors. Some schools take it into consideration more than others. However, every college has their resources to be able to tell approximately where you might fall in your, class rank overall, even though it's not provided. And then worst comes to worst, all of us really work hard in developing relationships with your guidance counselors. So, we can always contact them and say, for the purpose of this scholarship, where approximately does this student fall, so that we can give you the most money possible. All right. Any other questions? You're welcome, everyone. I hope it was helpful and not too overwhelming.